This is the spring 1984 issue of Atari Connection, a quarterly magazine that was published by Atari itself. This was the only issue I had, and as you can see by the wear and tear on it, I've had it a long time. What interested me then and now was the little article on Lucasfilm Games. It was during the time when they were just starting to make games, and this article describes two of their soon-to-be-released projects. A surreal ball game which would be known as the Classic Ball Blazer, and a realistic spaceflight game which is of course Rescue on Fractalus. What intrigued me most about this spaceflight game was that it was supposed to be fully three-dimensional, and that the landscape was randomly generated in real time using fractal geometry, so each time you played, it would be different. What's more, you could turn around and return to places you'd already seen. This blew me away. Randomly generated, but yet you could revisit areas. It sounded like magic. But I didn't get to play the game for quite a while, years in fact. It wasn't until Atari released the XE game system and repackaged a lot of old 8-bit games that I was lucky enough to get Rescue on Fractalus. But it was worth the wait. This game was and is so immersive. I remember back then just flying around, amazed at the terrain. I would fly just over a ridge or pass closely by one of the rugged peaks of the planet Fractalus and just marvel at it. I guess it might seem a little funny now to think that a game so low-res with a substandard frame rate and lots of mountains popping in would inspire such a reaction, but it was incredible back then. And the fact that it's all being generated on the fly on a standard Atari 8-bit computer still astounds me. And I still think this game looks great, period. Besides the beautifully rendered landscape, your cockpit is wonderfully designed, with a ton of lights and meters that give actual information. They aren't just for show. But luckily, Rescue on Fractalus is more than just a technical achievement. It's also fun to play. In this game, you're a pilot who's joined the elite rescue squadron. You're battling the dreaded Jaggies, who've taken the fight down to the hostile planet of Fractalus. Your mission is to launch from the mothership, descend to the surface, and rescue downed Ethercorps pilots. You have a specific amount of pilots you need to rescue to complete the difficulty level you're on. On the easiest level, you won't face any resistance from the Jaggies. But as you progress through the game, you'll encounter Jaggy gun emplacements on the mountaintops and ridges, flying saucers whose sole attack is trying to crash into you, and from level 16 on up, you'll experience the planet's 9-minute days and nights. This means when it's pitch black outside, you'll have to fly only by reading the instruments on your control panel. Of course, you can still make out the gun emplacements and other things glowing faintly, and when you're shot at, the sky lights up so you can see the peaks and valleys for a brief moment. Rescuing a pilot is pretty simple. Keep an eye on your long-range scanner. It monitors the area in front of your ship for emergency signals from downed pilots. When it picks up a signal, you'll see a dot pop up on the scanner. Fly in that direction. You'll also see a green cross on the ground to show you where the pilot is. Once you get close enough, within 2 units as shown on the range to pilot indicator, land your ship, turn off your systems and shields so the pilot can approach without getting cooked, and when he knocks, open the airlock so he can come in. Once he's in, you'll also replenish a little bit of energy for your ship from the pilot's energy cell. One of the neat details in the game is that because of the harsh conditions on Fractalus, the pilot can only survive outside for a limited time before his flight suit dissolves. If you don't open the airlock right away when a pilot arrives, his knocking will get slower and slower. If you do manage to open the airlock before he dies, his steps up to the ship will be slow and deliberate. But anyway, that's basically it for rescuing a pilot. Pretty easy, except for all the gun turrets and flying saucers trying to get you. Luckily, your ship does have one weapon, the antimatter bubble torpedo, so you can take out the gun emplacements and flying saucers. Originally, the game was designed to be non-violent and focus solely on rescuing the pilots. Your ship had no weapons at all. But one day during development, George Lucas dropped by, and during his short visit suggested two ideas that would become important elements in the game. First, after playing the game and wondering why nothing happened when he pressed the fire button, they then added in the AMB torpedo. His second idea was... Man, that scared me so much the first time it happened. So when you're rescuing a pilot, the helmet color is normally white. Rarely you'll rescue an ace pilot who will have a purple helmet. But once in a while you'll see one with a green helmet. George Lucas's idea was that sometimes you'd encounter a Jaggie disguised as an Ethercorps pilot. When you do, instead of knocking on the airlock door, the Jaggie will jump on the ship and try to break through your windshield. In order to kill it, you have to either turn your shields back on or engage your thrusters and take off. They kept this game element a secret to an extent, but it's funny because in the manual there's a little story that, while not specifically telling you what happens, makes it pretty clear that a pilot with a green helmet is bad. But who reads manuals? I know I didn't, beyond learning the controls. And then one time when I was playing, it was like, oh wow, a green helmet. That's interesting. Oh yeah, that's good stuff right there. That was the first time a game ever scared me. So when you're playing Rescue on Fractalus, wait for the knock. But be ready to turn on the shields if you have to. Especially if you can't see the pilot running to the ship, or on later levels where sometimes the Jaggies will be wearing white helmets. One thing you definitely don't want to do is open the airlock before you know who's coming. Because if a Jaggie boards your ship, it'll proceed to go crazy smashing it up. And if you try to fly away while this is going on, your vessel will be incredibly hard to control, and eventually the monster's going to destroy it anyway, and the game is over. The only way to get out of this situation is to hope that the mothership has arrived so you can hit your boosters and get off the planet. In case you couldn't tell, I really like Rescue on Fractalus. It's so much fun, and really interesting technologically and historically. It was the unfortunate victim of piracy when beta versions of the game that were sent to Atari were leaked, so some people got to know the game under the early names of Rescue Mission or Behind Jaggie Lines. And the aliens were called Jaggies as a reference to the jagged, non-anti-aliased graphics. But I'll put some links in the description box, which have a lot more info, and are worth checking out so you can really get in-depth with the game's history and creation. I feel like I can't do this game justice with my little video. It was just an engrossing experience back then, and if I had to make a list of games that are most memorable to me personally, this would be in the top 5. It was great on the Atari 8-bit, but was also available on the 5200, Commodore 64, and others. So if you're interested in an early and very successful attempt at a fully 3D game on an early machine, this is well worth checking out.